Good morning. My name is Rich Foreman, and today I'm going to talk about how you, as a non-technical person, can create your own minimum viable product. So before I start, I'm just going to go over some housekeeping rules. Everyone joined today, they're muted. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature. And then at the end of the presentation, I'll address those questions. And as you may have heard, the presentation will be recorded. And then you'll have access to not only the afterwards, you'll have not only access to the recording, but you'll also have access to my deck. So for this presentation, I'm going to assume that you have an idea for a startup and you're non-technical and you might be financially challenged. But my goal is at the end of this presentation is for you to have different strategies for you to create your own minimum viable product. So this is what I'm going to be going over today. I'm going to do a self-introduction, and I'm going to discuss what is an MVP or a minimum viable product. I'll discuss the MVP process, the different types of MVPs, and then I'll talk about ways to build a functional MVP, and then I'll end with some general entrepreneurial advice. So let me introduce myself. My name is Rich Foreman, and I describe myself as a serial entrepreneur. I started my entrepreneurial journey with an app development company I founded called Apptology in 2010. Since then, I've had two exits. I'm highly connected in the Sacramento startup ecosystem, where I run the Startup Brand chapter, Startup Folsom MedStart. So if you are interested in the Sacramento region, I'm happy to talk to you about, why you should move up here or what the resources we have here. And currently I'm working on two startups. One's a medical startup that we've developed a formulation that helps with chemotherapy side effects. And the other one is an AI startup. Like I think everyone almost needs to have an AI startup nowadays. And a lot of what I'm going to discuss is based on myself running Apptology, where I had a team, where my team and myself literally have developed over 500 apps since 2010. We learned a lot from our customer successes and failures. And in actuality, I think you learn more from the failures. So what is an MVP? And I'm going to pause here for some commentary. Entrepreneurship is an experiment. So you have a hypothesis that you can solve a problem and people will pay you to solve that problem. And so this is where the MVP comes to play. You want to build something quickly and inexpensively to test your hypothesis. So the main purpose of an MVP is to test features and to get feedback. And the ultimate goal is to achieve product market fit, where not only do you have customers that are willing to buy your product, but they're actually willing to promote your product to other people. So it's an iterative process. You build your MVP, you get feedback, you learn from it, then you rework your MVP. And I'm sure you heard the Silicon Valley mantra, fail fast, fail often. And that being the case, your MVP should ideally be quick to build and inexpensive. So let's discuss the MVP process. And before I start, I think, I had mentioned earlier, you learn a lot from your failures. And I'm going to talk about my first startup. It was called Ready Edition. It was a platform made for the publishing industry to provide them with an app, a companion app for their magazine or newspaper. And I think I spent about a total of 50K on this project. And it failed horribly. Our target customers didn't want it. Customers that were interested thought our product was too primitive. And when I reflect back, I really had little understanding of the publishing industry, and my research was only cursory. And you've probably heard that they say passion is important, and it is, because in hindsight, what I could have done was I could have reiterated and keep reworking the product. But I found myself actually just not caring for the publishing industry, and I just walked away from it. So here's the basic MVP process. You need to do your research. Two, you need to develop a business plan. Three, create a product process flow. Then from that, you're going to list and develop your MVP features. Finally, you build your MVP, and then you reiterate. So let's start out with the market research. And this is super important. You really have to understand the market you're going to. You do need to know the issues they face, the competitive landscape, the market size, and understand the problem that you're trying to solve. And very importantly, get away from your computer and talk to potential customers. With my last startup, I think one of the biggest mistakes was I didn't actually talk to enough customers. Um, and then that said, I think, if you're in an industry already, and you see a problem, that's where you have a natural advantage because you've been working that, you've been seeing the problems firsthand in that industry. So a lot of times, if you're in a certain industry and you see a problem, you're actually way ahead of anybody that's not familiar with that industry. Next is develop a business plan, and this allows you to see basically your idea from a 360 degree 360 degree view. And, like in the 90s, it used to be that you had to build, write up a 100-page business plan, but that's almost passe. The business model Canva has become the standard for most incubators and accelerators. If you're interested, you want to Google business model Canva, and you'll see more information about that. Next is you need to develop a process flow. So my undergraduate degree was in industrial engineering. And this is where one of the few things I kind of realize where I think my degree actually works is I basically tell people that first you got to do a process flow of the existing process. And then after you've got an understanding of the existing process, then, develop a second process flow where you think your solution can then, can simplify, make it faster, cheaper, etc. And then from there, this is how you can then start working towards the MVP. So based on your process flow, that's where you could determine the features. And it's almost like as you go through the process flow, these are the features you have to actually set. And I want to stay with the philosophy. I encourage you to stay with the philosophy of minimum viable product. Because if you are going to basically be adding new products or new features that are in the process flow, you could be potentially asking for features that your customers aren't asking. And this will actually basically, make it more expensive and take longer for you to develop your MVP. Finally, build your MVP, and I'm going to discuss this more in detail in the next two sections. And then finally, you reiterate. You build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn. And if you think about it, for successful products, this doesn't stop. Apple just announced their iPhone 16. So for them, the cycle continues. Build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn. And the goal is product market fit. When you have customers that are not only willing to buy it, but they're going to recommend it to others. So let's go over the different types of MVPs. And for this section, I'm going to actually break it down between low fidelity MVP and high fidelity MVP. So low fidelity MVP, I almost want to describe as part of the market research. And high fidelity MVP is what I would describe as something being functional. So let's start with the whole low fidelity MVP. And one example is the explainer video. And I'm give an example. The founder of Dropbox, his name is Drew Houston. He was working on a functional MVP, but it was really buggy and he had a lot of problems with it. So what he ended up doing was creating an explainer video. And this explainer video was good enough to get people interested in what he did. And he was also accepted into YC. Another example of a low fidelity MVP is a landing page. So the founder of Buffer had an idea for, his startup, but he wasn't quite sure, would people actually buy it. So what he did was he created a landing page. Like you can see a screenshot here, and it basically has 3 steps here, and then basically what Buffer does is it allows you to schedule out your social media post. And then he put a button, for plans and pricing on that landing page. And then he tweeted it out to see, what kind of response he got. So when people went to this landing page and they actually saw this and then they clicked on the price plans and pricing, they got a message like, hey, we're not, this isn't ready yet, but if you're interested, just put in your contact information. And so he did this and he got enough feedback that this is something that people wanted. And so if you're looking for developing a landing page, I actually highly recommend Card. And here's the URL. It's something that I've actually used quite often. And actually, it's not only a great platform for creating landing page, but if you just wanted to do a one-page website, it's got fantastic features. And I've developed a number of websites using this platform. So another good way to create an MVP is to create what I call a tappable mockup. So you would actually do the normal steps you would do for developing an app and start with a wireframe and get a professional UI designer to create the UI design. And if that designer is using Figma, you could actually stitch the design, the screens together so that it'll simulate what the app will do. And so if you push a button, it goes to a different screen, etc. You can navigate the mockup. And I'll just say that this method, I have a friend of mine had a great exit where his startup went public, and he started by just using a mockup. So when he first created his mockup, he actually was able to use that mockup to develop, to recruit a developer to join his team who actually built his first app. And long story short, his startup was acquired by another company, which then went public, and he actually had quite a handsome exit. So I had mentioned Figma, which is a great way to start because if you develop your UI in Figma, this is something that your developers can actually use in the actual app. But if you use another platform, you could take the UI design and then stitch it together. And I personally use a product called Marvel App. And you could take a bunch of your screens that your designer has made, and you can actually stitch to make it a mockable, tappable mockup. So let's talk about high fidelity MVPs, which have some functionality. And the concierge MVP is actually an example where the service is manually delivered by the people of the startup. So when Airbnb started, they had a theory or a hypothesis that people would be willing to pay strangers to stay at their home. So what they did is they put up this page here, and they had a room, they threw a mattress in it, and they basically advertised that room on their website. And so there was no e-commerce, there was no check on their website. It basically had a phone number and an email. So when the founders got contacted, they did all the work. So that's where the term concierge comes in. The next type of MVP is affectionately called the Wizard of Oz. So if you know the movie if you've seen the movie Wizard of Oz, the Great Oz was just this dude in the back controlling a puppet. In this case, the MVP is just the facade. So an example is when Zappos first started, their hypothesis is, will people be willing to buy shoes online? So when they started, they created a website and took a lot of pictures of shoes from a local shoe stores. And when someone bought a pair from their site, they actually would go to the shoe store, buy it, and then ship it out. And just a more recent example, I have a friend that has developed she has a ed tech startup, an AI ed tech startup, and really all she ended up doing was she talked about a lot of the stuff she did, but really in the back she did all the work using ChatGPT. So here's another example of Wizard of Oz MVP. And finally, we'll talk about the functional MVP, and this is what we normally think of an MVP. And I'm going to dig deeper into that in the next section. So let's talk about building a functional MVP. And then in this section, I'm going to talk about the three ways you could do it. You could start out with the traditional method, which is what I think most people think. You could start out with an existing source code, and then you could also use a no-code platform. So let's start with the traditional method. So at a high level, when you want to create a user, create a wireframe and develop the user interface. So if you see the first two steps here, this is like the exact same steps that you would use in creating a tappable mockup. So once you're using a tappable mockup, you've already started your way to developing a full functional MVP. And then once you've got the user interface design, the developers actually have a clear they have a clear vision of what needs to be put together. The one thing you probably are not aware of is that there is typically most apps require a backend. This is a cloud database that is required to, it's basically the brains of it. And this is something that we would typically build on AWS or Azure or Google Cloud. And then when I talk to our clients, I say after the project is done, we typically recommend that they budget about 20% annually of the initial price for a maintenance and update. So if you think about it, Apple and Android do major updates on their operating system annually. So at a minimum, you need to make sure that your app supports the current operating system. And building an app from scratch is not cheap. I would say a minimum and this is using an offshore developer, would be about 20K. And I've seen some projects go north of $1 million. And then, the more complex, the more features that an app has, it's going to take more time. And some projects I've seen will take over a year to build. And because of the long lengths, projects can fail. And this can happen for many reasons. Developers leave. I've seen a startup where the lead developer was recruited by Google and they were kind of left up a creek without a paddle. Founders leaving. I had a founder actually die on me. And then scope creep is actually pretty big. And then because it was scope creep, basically project becomes more expensive. And actually one of the biggest reasons is they just run out of money. So another way to create an MVP is to start out with an existing source code. So when Uber was popular, I had a lot of people that have approached me with variations of the Uber model. So like Uber for plumbers, I want an Uber for a hair blower, and on and on and on. And whenever they came to me and they were talking about building from scratch, I would say it's a fairly expensive process. And I just off the bat, I would just say 100K. But it's a lot cheaper and faster if you start out with an existing source code. So if you actually Google source code marketplace, or you could also Google something like Uber or Yelp or Facebook source code clone, you'll find something. And then you'll still need a developer to do the customization, the branding, manage the back end and do the maintenance. A lot of times when you buy a source code from one of these markets, they actually will have a developer available that can actually do the work for you. So both for the traditional method and in using a source code, make sure that you have the rights to the IP. If you hire a developer or have one on the team, make sure that he or she assigns the ownership of the IP to your business entity. And actually, the very first app I built, it was called iMotherGoose. It was inspired by my daughter. I had the idea when I had the daughter. And essentially what it was I created a template to create book apps. So, once we had the template created, you just swap out the image files and the audio files, and you would have another app. And so I recruited a developer, and I basically provided him all the resources. I bought him a MacBook, and we actually started to get some success. We actually were featured on the local television, and then he actually turns to me and he goes, this IP, I own the IP. And then I was really furious, but he was right because we didn't really assign where the rights of the source code go to, because he wrote it, he owned the copyright of it. And this is an example of a project where I kind of had to walk away because I didn't own the IP and I just walked away from it. So again, if you're going to, developing code, make sure that your business entity owns the source code and the IP to it. So finally, I'm going to discuss developing an app using a no-code platform. And I'm just going to read this out. A no-code platform is a software development tool that allows users to create applications without writing code. And I'm going to add to this, or low code, or little code. So I've done this enough where I know that it also helps if you know a little bit, if you have a little coding experience. Some advantages, it's relatively inexpensive. Instead of tens of thousands of dollars to start, you could actually start with a free trial and your credit card. And apps can be built extremely fast. A number of years ago, I actually entered the California Health Data Hackathon. And over a weekend, my team and I actually built an app for the Sacramento County WIC office. And we won first prize of $10,000. So over a weekend, we developed a fully functional app for iOS and Android. Typically, they're very feature rich. And they typically the features are more common, more about displaying content, and they actually do that in many different ways. And there are a number of design templates that you can choose. And if you have a really good designer, these templates can actually be made to look really good. The other positives is the backend is typically included with these platforms. So a CMS like the platform I use, also each app has its own content management system that allows you to update the app. It allows you to send out push notifications. It can track users and track analytics. And these platforms are typically a SaaS model, so you have to pay a monthly fee. And one of the advantages of that is the maintenance is also included. They're going to maintain, it's a SaaS model, so you're going to maintain their platform. But it also includes maintenance of the app. So you know how annually, each of the Android and iOS will do an upgrade. So the update for the app is also included in this monthly fee. So now with when the next release of iOS comes out, then I'm going to have to update the apps with the latest version. And this is actually just part of the service. I don't have to pay extra for that. So let's discuss some of the limitations. And it goes, some of the strengths are also the weaknesses. They have limited features. There are limited design templates. And scalability can be an issue. So some of the platforms I know, it's like the more downloads you get, the more expensive the monthly fee gets. And in the end, you don't own the source code. You're actually, it's a SaaS model. You don't own the source code. And if the app doesn't support all the features, it is possible to leverage third-party integrations. You need to see if the platform has APIs. The other way to add features that aren't supported on the platform is creating a web app, and then you could actually embed it in the app similar to like an iframe. And then the other thing too is, you have your MVP features, and you're looking at the features for that's supported on the platform. And sometimes the easiest thing to do is not include that feature. So a few weeks ago, I was talking to a startup, and they had a list of features they wanted, and I would say, and I told them like, I actually kind of I always recommend the no-code platform because it's actually inexpensive and fast. But there was a couple features that wasn't supported on a platform, and I really asked them like, hey, do you want to spend instead of spending hundreds of dollars just getting this MVP, would you rather spend tens of thousands of dollars in extra months to get this feature in it? And then he thought about it, and he goes, yeah, I guess I could kind of live without that feature. So, if you can, try to go with what's supported. And then as you develop your MVP and you see that the feature is really needed, then you could maybe build it in the next release or something. So I'm going to do a quick case study on a no-code platform. And this is me personally, my personal experience. I was approached by a clinical psychologist for him to build a wellness app for the Vacaville Police Department. The name of the company, by the way, is Cortical, as you see. And after I met with him, I said that we could probably use our already built platform. So that's what I white labeled. That's what we call our platform. We white labeled the provider. And after building it, I didn't hear from him for 6 months. And then he called me and said, hey, I need another one for the Dixon Police Department. And the next month, he needed me to create another one for the Dixon Fire Department. And then it began to snowball. He actually asked me to join him full time. So I actually put my app company, Apptology, into maintenance mode. And I joined him full time as a CTO. And in the 2 years, we developed over 100 wellness apps for first responders. And our customers included CHP, CAL FIRE, CDCR. And actually, one of the things I'm really proud of is we are aware that our apps actually prevented forced suicide of law enforcement agency officers. And so what happens, we went from 0 to 4 million in ARR in 2 years. And then we got acquired by a private equity company and then merged into one of their portfolio companies. And just some side notes there. So, you know, after they, in terms of IP, so after they acquired us, what I ended up doing was, I had them sign up for their own account on the platform we're using. And then I transferred all the apps from our account to their account. So they actually own those apps. The other thing too, when they were doing their due diligence and their CTO was asking me, like, so if you get it, the question he asked me was, if you get a new customer, how much would it cost to maintain that new customer? What's the cost to the infrastructure? And I looked at him and I said, $20 a month. And I just remember he was just totally floored. So if you Google no-code app builder, you'll see a number of platforms that are out there, and I've only used a couple myself. And the one I use is actually BuildFire. I actually have a retail license for that. I have a number of friends that actually use Bubble. They've created their MVPs using Bubble. And if you're just looking just for a website, I actually really recommend Squarespace. I use Squarespace a lot to build websites, and it's a great platform, and that's a truly no-code platform. So if you're looking for a no-code platform, what do you look for? First thing is you need to make sure it's cross-platform, that it supports iOS, Android, and you probably don't even think about this, but there's another platform called PWA, or Progressive Web App Form. Progressive Web App. So it's basically a web version of your platform. It needs to have a content management system so that you can manage and update the apps. And this is typically like a cloud-based dashboard, and you can send out push notifications, et cetera. And then you could even have your customers, manage it too. And then, hopefully you've gone through the first part of the exercise and you determine your MVP features. So you can compare that to the features that the platform supports. And then, if there isn't, if they're not all there, see if they have APIs so that you could possibly do a customization. And the support's a big issue. So when I first started using the BuildFire Cloud, it was actually, there was a learning curve. And so I remember having to go through the help, but also I ended up calling the support because there's a few things I couldn't figure out. And make sure that you have that support there. And then scalability is also an issue. So like you don't want your success to be something where you have to pay more. So several of those platforms, their model is the more downloads you have, the more it increases your monthly payment. So you want to get to, and actually some of these models actually have different pricing models. You want to get the model where it doesn't penalize you for your success. So this is one point I'm going to basically stop and do a little commercial about myself. So as I had mentioned earlier, I'm a BuildFire reseller. And so if you go to BuildFire's website, you can actually see they have consulting packages, and one of them is to build an MVP for $5,000. I'll do it for less, for $4,000. And actually, I think I actually could do it better because I have I could give you the entrepreneurial eye on your platform. So if you're interested, if you don't feel like you have the expertise or time to build your MVP using a no-code platform, you can scan this QR code, and I could contact you, and then we could discuss So I'm going to end with some parting advice and this is general entrepreneurship advice. And I cannot, I cannot, I've said this several times, but the end goal is product market fit. And when my first, if you recall, my first startup I created was Ready Edition, had terrible market fit. Like, we did it for a year, and I really didn't have any sales. We gave it away for proof of concept, but it had terrible market fit. And then at Cortical, once we started getting through the first two apps, there was such a need in law enforcement for mental health, addressing mental health that it just exploded. Like I said, we went from 0 to 4 million in 2 years. I ended up working like 12-hour days, 7 days a week just to keep up with the demand. I had to hire people and train them. And when you're at that part where you could barely meet up demand, that's product market fit, and that's what you're aiming for. And I have to, intellectual, if you're doing the traditional method or the source code method, make sure that your business entity owns the source code and the IP. Because I've done it, if you actually hire a contractor to build you to write source code and they're not an employee, technically they own the copyright to it. So make sure that if you go down this road, that you assign the IP gets assigned to your business entity. And I think in general, if you could solve a niche problem, that's if you see a niche problem and you could solve it, that's actually a sure way for success. And this is an icon from one of my early clients who wanted to build an app for longshoremen. And so what longshoremen are, those are the people that take stuff on and off ships, and they're like typically laborers, and they're union workers. And the man, our customer was actually a longshoreman himself. And the way they would track their hours is they literally had a notebook where they wrote their time, what ship they were at and how much vacation they had. And that's how they tracked their hours. And so what this gentleman wanted to do is he wanted people to do it on an app. And if I were a longshoreman, I would rather do that than actually have this pen and paper system. And so there are about a quarter million longshoremen. There was about a quarter million longshoremen in the United States. And so if he only got like 10% of those people buying it, and what he was doing was it was a subscription model. It was 99 cents. You've only got a quarter of that market. That's like $25,000 a month. And to market to this niche, they have a magazine. There's only certain places they attend. It would actually be relatively easy to market. The other thing is just go to networking events. And in general, I say the more people you meet, the more options you have. If you and and I just find that this is so true. I actually go to a lot of networking events in both Sacramento, and I used to go a lot in Silicon Valley. So Sacramento is about 2 hours away from Silicon Valley, and I've just met a lot of people that have just really different, interesting uh, experiences and strength. And there is this adage, your network is your net worth. And I find that to be very true. So as you're networking, look for people that can be part of your team. And once you have a good working team, it's really magic. Um, at Cortico, like we believe, the team we built, like really believed in the mission of helping first responders, helping law enforcement and firefighters with their mental health. And then whenever we had a sale, we would celebrate it was a win and we would celebrate it. So, and it becomes just it's a magical experience where, there's a synergy and excitement. So building a good team is important. And then my general advice when I talk to startups is I actually advise that they actually need to have a proficiency in digital marketing. So let's say you develop a solution and then there's a guy in Montana that actually needs that solution. What does that guy do? He actually will Google it. And if he can't find your solution on Google, you don't exist. So you really should have an understanding of digital marketing. And this specifically here, I'm talking about SEO, a search engine optimization. And then there's this concept of nailing it and scaling it. And so several years ago, there was a startup called Rocket Spoon. They were doing food delivery, and they were the darling of YC. They got like $12 million in funding, and they started their operation in Oakland. And they were being pressured, really pressured to really expand and grow. So they took their model and they expanded to San Diego and Seattle. And the problem is their Oakland operation was not profitable. It was losing money. And so when they expanded, they basically replicated uh, a failing model, and they basically tripled their losses, their burn rate by doing so. And they went out of, they had a $12 million funding, and they basically went out of business in a year. And you look at Uber. Uber started in San Francisco, and they had a lot of challenges. It was a two-sided market, so they had to recruit drivers and train the drivers, and then you actually had to recruit passengers or market to passengers, and let them know that it is safe to ride with a stranger. And then there was all sorts of regulatory issues that they had to figure out. But once they figured it out, they expanded city by city, and now they're the juggernaut that they are. So the concept again is nail it and scale it. And then finally, what we're actually at the point where I could do Q&A. So let me grab this here. Let me grab the Q&A. Oops, let me go forward. All right, so anonymous, someone asked, where is Sacramento? And Sacramento is about 2 hours east of the Bay Area. So, and that's without traffic. With traffic, it could be 4 hours. And so I myself actually lived in the Silicon Valley for, I don't know, like 8 years. And then it changes, when I got married, we realized we couldn't afford anything. So moved 2 hours to Sacramento. And it's a beautiful place. It's much more affordable, great quality of life. Here's a question. Can you please help me continue to build using the constant feedback from my current environment so I optimize the continuation of my provisions of solutions for those that are still failing? I want to do without the need of me depending on any money anymore. So I don't know. Yeah, just contact me, and I'm going to leave my contact information, and you can contact me, and I can see if I can help. Uh, the true MVP, most valuable player, inspires without charging a fee. We inspire to charge inspirational functions within living features. Okay, just contact me. I'm not sure what that's about. Can you help me propel MVPs and generate more MVPs? Yeah, give me a call. Here's one from Bernice. Do you request the ownership of the source code in the beginning with a contract before it begins? Yes. So if you're going to engage, Bernice, if you're going to engage with a developer, before before you actually engage them, have the contract specifically state that the ownership of the IP of the source code is to the business entity. There's famous examples like when Facebook was done, Mark Zuckerberg didn't really have a contract with the whatever those twins' names were, and so he really owned the source code. So have that in writing before you engage it. If you don't, then like I gave you my cautionary tale. I didn't have that in writing, and so I actually had to walk away from my product because the product my first app that I built because I couldn't do anything with it. It says it's not about creating entities, it's about creating the one who identified, acknowledging the person who already have a national ID. Do you agree? So contact me. I think this is specific, Insidio. Bernice, if you don't own the source code in a no code, do you have to share the profits with the software company? Um, so yeah, if you're using a no code platform, the only thing that you do is you have to pay the fee to the platform. You don't, so there is no like, you don't have to, if you're making a profit. So like, like I said, when we were using Cortical, when we reached like 4 million ARR, the only thing we had to pay was the normal, the monthly fees that we paid them. And I think the monthly fee was something like $1,500 a month or something. It was actually relatively inexpensive. So, for using that platform back then, it was something like $1,500. So, that's why I really like the no-code platforms. Says, I want to help you put money inside a chest and bury it, so forget about and reconnect with the wealth of social life. Okay, Nancy, I'll just give me a call. Is there a payment plan? If this is a person talking about for me being to helping out with your platform, yeah, I could probably figure something out with you. Just reach out to me and we can work out. Is there a money back guarantee? So, uh, I can, I don't know what you mean by that, but I can guarantee you that I can get the app on the platform, app built, but I can't guarantee if your app's going to make money. That part I don't know. What if someone copies the MVP launch, and that happens all the time? After Uber was successful, you got Lyft. The only way to really prevent that is basically having a patent on it, and you could talk to numbers. If you have a patent, so if you're trying to protect your IP, the best way to do it is contact a patent lawyer, and that'll help protect your idea. Um, there's a couple projects that I worked on, and oops, my head fell off. There's a couple projects that I'm working on where one we asked a patent lawyer to basically say that's not patentable, and then that the medical one we actually went the patent round, and we got a number of granted patents. And this is because we have the patents, we know that no one can, and we have good and well-written patents that we have our protective moat, and that makes us much more interested in. There's a few like large corporations that are interested in working with us, and what's interesting is those corporations could easily replicate what we do, but because we have the patents, they know they'd have to work with us. Can you provide a free consultation? Yes, I'm always happy to talk to people. I love working with startups. I don't know if it keeps you young, but I'm happy to talk to anybody about their idea. And just give them feedback. Sometimes you may not like the feedback. I'm working with a customer, and I'm still working with them, but honestly, I don't get it. But I've given that mess. I've actually told them I don't understand your monetization. I don't think your monetization uh I don't think your monetization is going to work. So I'll give you that feedback too. You'd like it or leave. Yeah, and I'll provide actually let me do that now. This is my contact information on the final slide. So that's my cell phone number, that's my email. And then if you're interested in the MVP package, you can click the QR code and just put it there. This other one here, here it is. Would I be willing to have a chat about an idea that solves a niche problem? Is it possible to raise funds on an idea level, or does it have to be first an MVP? So yeah, I'm happy to talk. I'm happy to talk to anybody. And again, I'll give you my honest feedback, like it or not. It is possible to raise funds on an idea itself, but I actually tell people ideas are cheap. I know a lot of people that say, hey, I had, back in the early 90s, I had the same idea as Amazon. Well, why didn't you do anything about it? Um, if you're able to build an MVP, it means that uh, some grit and you have some skin in the game. And and you have to think about it from an investor standpoint. Like if you have no entrepreneurial experience, but you have an idea, the only people that would probably be willing to give you money is your friends and family, like because they know you personally and they know you. If you have grit and you have the intestinal fortitude to do that. But an angel investor, probably not. That said, I've seen a couple examples where people were able to convince someone based on an idea. How about using Fiverr, Upwork, and other outsourcing? Yes, I think that's a way to do that. That's using your traditional method or source code. However, again, if you're going to use Fiverr, Upwork, and outsourcing options, you need to get in writing that you own the source code, you own the IP. Because again, if you're using a Fiverr, Upwork, or other outs, they're not employees of you, so they actually own the copyright to it. So if you're going to do that, make sure you have you have the IP buttoned up before you engage with them. And if they say no, walk away because you do not want to spend the time and money for someone else to own the code. And you can see that I'm sort of passionate about it because I got burned really bad on it. So don't learn from me. Don't do that. What no-code platform that I use for Cortical? So the no-code platform I use for Cortical was actually called Business Apps, and then Business Apps was acquired by BuildFire, and then I had to. So I actually it's one of those stuff. It's funny. Business Apps was actually created by the founders were from Chico State. I actually met them personally. They had a great platform, and they actually ended up selling their platform to another, they had an exit. And after their exit, I would say this, the people that bought it didn't care about, like they didn't, there was no innovation. And I've seen this time and time again, whenever a company gets acquired, the innovation stops. That happened when I worked at WebEx. When Cisco acquired us, the innovation stopped. Um, and I'll have to say, sadly, at Cortico, when Cortico was acquired, I think the innovation took a nosedive. And I actually was trying to tie it. And so the thing was the innovation at business apps also nosedived and or actually became non-existent. I think so much that when they were acquired, they only wanted the business BuildFire only wanted the customer list. And so I actually had to rebuild all the apps I had built on business apps. But the good thing is BuildFire actually solved a lot of the issues that I saw with business apps. And it's a really great platform. Do you think we should have already launched multiple iterations of MVP before reaching out to investors? Or can we reach out to them after we launch our VO and continue to build on it? So, yeah. So the answer is yes. The more that you do, the more that you can do upfront before engaging investors, the better. So let's look at a spectrum and think of it yourself. So on one end, there is you basically have a PowerPoint slide. You just have an idea. On the other end, you actually have a product. You've gone to market. You're generating revenue. Maybe you're getting making you're making a profit. So if you see that spectrum and you're here where you only have an idea, that's high risk to the investor. But if you're here, that's lower risk. So if you're able to at least get some, you could alleviate some of the risk. Like you could show an MVP, you could show that people like it, that you're tested, that it's people like what you have. You could show that some traction or growth. Then you'll have the interest of investors. But otherwise, they don't know. It's just like it's a risk for them. So again, more that you could do the more that you could do to here where you're able to actually have a product customers profit, the less risk for it and the less equity that they're going to take for their investment. What is the fastest way to develop an MVP and what's the shortest amount of time? So if you remember my presentation, the fastest way that I saw developing an MVP is a landing page. You have an idea, you put a landing page out there, and and then you see what kind of response you get. You could do that in minutes. So that's the fastest way. If you're talking functional, using a no-code platform, I could build an MVP. I've built a full iPhone and Android app in a couple of days. Is it necessary that we generate some revenue with our MVP for reaching out to investors? No, I think you just need to get traction and feedback. In fact, when I've talked to some investors, they'd actually almost what they want to do is they want to talk to your customers. They want to see like they're not expert unless they're vertical. They're probably not experts in that thing, and they want to get the feedback from the customers that this is something that people are willing to spend money. So actually, it's more important like you actually have your MVP and you have some customers using it and giving it feedback. It's not necessarily worth it. Um, in fact, a lot of times if you have an MVP, you actually almost have to give it away for free. just to get that feedback. And that's what I generally found. And in fact, at Cortical, our first app, the app we built for the Vacaville Police Department was done for free. Or, but it solved such a big problem that the police chief there just loved it. And he started talking to his other friend, police chief. And that's one of the reasons we got traction is that he loved the product so much that he became an evangelist for that product. Oh, all right. Speak slower when reading the question. Thank you. Am I an angel investor? I have invested in some projects, uh, but right now the money I have right now is actually kind of tied up in some of the startups I'm working on. Will you provide services in exchange for equity? So as an app developer, I get this question a lot, and the answer is maybe. And when I say it's probably more, I would be willing to reduce um, the price for equity, exchange for equity, because I think you need to have skin in the game. So just in general, and I'm going to talk for developers and just in general, developers are typically well sought after. And so people are wooing them not only with equity, but they're actually paying them. And so when you just say, I'm going to do it for equity, that puts a lot of the risk on the person. So you really need to have some skin in the game. Will you be circulating a copy of the slide deck to the attendees? Yes, I'm going to provide this to the organizer. You'll have a copy of the recording and a copy of my slide deck. What's your advice about giving shares or future equity discount price for shares to contractors like yourself or others for a startup? How do you do valuations? That's more of a lawyer question. So part of it is just what you think in value, your value to it. So like when I joined Cortical, I negotiated a 10% equity in Cortical, for me to join them. Plus, he also gave me a salary. So it just basically it's what you can negotiate. I think something that's pure equity probably won't float. And maybe you consider them, if you're at the stage where if you're at the stage where you're talking about equity for build, you're probably more at the founder stage. So I would, more consider looking at founder equity. So that's usually a higher percentage. And for valuation, that's like the $1 billion question. I mean, actually, YC, for example, their strict model is the what's that called? I'm going blank on it. But they typically go with it's the model where what the hell is it called? I can't think of it right now. But it's like a deferred moment. They're basically, that valuation is always a hard thing. So they're basically saying it's called a safe. So they usually go with a safe model. That's the word I was looking for. So it's like, it's a refundable thing, but then at the first you have to repay the loan, or after the first investment, then they get 15% discount on whatever that was. So that's usually a lot of angel investors use the safe method. Do you help with marketing strategy? I can. I mean, I'm sort of a jack of all trades, and I've done enough where I could help with the marketing strategy, but I am not a marketing strategy expert. How much does it cost to set up a landing page? If you use card, I think it's like $20 or $25. And I have on card, I have the reseller license, so I get like 75 landing pages for like $80. So it's like $1 a landing page. Are there maintenance fees for landing pages? Well, there's the landing pages I'm seeing are typically a SaaS model. So when I say it was like $25, it's $25 annually, and the license I have with them is for like, I think it's like 75 landing pages for $80, and I pay that annually. Can you please email me your preferred mobile number with the international code and email address so we can chat safely and dig deeper? Okay, so I'll reach out to you. So my cell phone, it's the United States, so the country code is one. I should have put that here. I forget there are typo, but yeah, I'll follow up with you, anonymous. Okay. Do you provide general coaching for startups? I do. I do. And I actually, a lot of people come to me and, I'll just give them advice and I don't expect anything, unless they want to, have me as advisor. But I do a lot of advice. I actually like working with startups. And, if you find me on LinkedIn, you'll see that I work with a lot of startups, especially in the Sacramento area. What is the minimum investment we need to make in beginning to have a basic app on iOS App Store and Android App Store? So, if you wanted to use a no-code platform, you could Google it, like I said, and most of them have some sort of like trial, and you just put in a credit card. And I think typically it's like a few $100s a month or something, like maybe even $100 a month. Uh, and that's if you want to do that yourself. If you wanted me or even Buildfire to build the app for you, you're looking at 4,000 for me, Buildfire for 5,000 monthly plus the monthly fee, maintenance fee towards the provider. Can we get a discount if we mention ideas to IPO? Just reach out to me. And basically, I'm doing this in partnership with Rob, so we could talk about discounts. How do you know it's time to exit? Accept an offer to buy the IP or the business or both, or let them become shareholders. Your experience, the pitfalls. Um, that's a big question. Um, you could do the math. You could actually go check it in ChatGPT. So our company was acquired for. We had, by the time it was acquired, we had 4 million in ARR, and you could go and ChatGPT and figure out how much, get an approximate of what the exit price was. That being said, and the company we got acquired was like $100 million corporation. And so one of the issues we had is if we didn't get, let them acquire, they have the resources to compete with us. That being said, after we got acquired, I just have to tell you, I thought they were idiots. They didn't understand what we were doing. And I still have some friends that are still there. And it hurts me because we were building a great company and they just let it die they're letting it die on the vine. And I wish we didn't sell. And knowing what I know, we would be, I would say we would be doing very well. Like, we were making, we by now we'd probably be a $20 million ARR if we were keeping the same pace. So it's hard because, there's a lot of different equations. In the end, I only had 10% equity and, the founder made the decision and he was super stressed out. And so for him, it was the right answer. But for me, I wish we had stayed and kept it. So, that is a big question. And I think I don't know if I answer, but there are some pitfalls. But in general, one of the VCs that I talked to, they said it's, if you have a good exit, it allows you to work on other projects afterwards. So now that I've left Cortico, I'm working on this chemotherapy product, which I think will actually have a huge societal impact. And so that, gives you another opportunity. Does our MVP have to be perfect before marketing it to our customers? Since in my case, we're building an AI MVP, but its accuracy is not perfect. So the answer is no. The purpose of an MVP is not to be perfect. It's to get feedback. And I think I told you, like I have a friend, she has an ed tech AI company, and she really was doing the Wizard of Oz MVP. Like she basically had a website. She would talk to school districts and she could tell them she could do all this. But really what she was doing was she was using ChatGPT to do all the work. Now that she's got someone technical on her team, she's building a platform. But her first MVP was just basically smoke and mirrors. It was just a website and using ChatGPT manually. do have contracts in California state government. I know a couple. In fact, I'm working with somebody right now. We're thinking about building a nonprofit called GovStart to help government startups. So I have people I know like first responders, like police chiefs, but not actually. I don't actually personally have contacts in the state government itself, but I do know people that do. What is the best way to get government contracts? And I wish I could answer that. It is, it takes, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can go online and figure out. So one of the reasons we were successful at Fortico is that our sales rep had sold to uh, law enforcement for like 20 years. In fact, I actually went with him to a law enforcement conference, and as walking with him, there's a lot of people that just knew him and just waved hi. And I think it's having that personal relationship. And so, he could actually, he knew who the decision makers, and he would go with them, go up to them, and sell to them directly. And the decision maker was the one who figured it out. So, for example, he sold the one of our customers was the Pinot Police Department, and they didn't have the budget for the app. I think it was $10,000 annually. So the chief of police actually went to the went to the city council and asked for money for this app. So I guess, you know, to answer your question, one is get familiar with government contracting, but two, if you can get to the decision maker right away, they will make it, they will do what they can. If you could sell them directly, they will do what they can to buy your product and to try to cut through the red tape. How much should I, how would I know how much money to raise from investors? So first thing to do is do the business model Canva, and you want to figure out how much it costs to develop your app, and how much your burn rate would be, and then that's a good place to start. Um, but again, I think my general advice is before you try to raise money from investors, you need to build something that they could see. Investors typically will not invest in an idea. I've seen them done, but they typically won't invest in an idea. If they're investing in an idea, they're really investing in a person. Like it's a family member or a business colleague that they know that person can do it. They're investing in that person, not necessarily just an idea. Can you say again what you use for landing pages? Yeah, I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. It's called Card, so it's CARRD. And it's really inexpensive, but I'll put that in the chat again. How about getting contracts in the U.S. military? So I'm actually a Navy veteran myself, and I think the advice goes the same true. You need to go. There's all these hurdles, so you need to be registered. There's to do business with the federal government, you have to register under something called SAM. I forgot what the acronym stands for. That's the first start. And then a lot of times you actually have to, you know, if it's over a certain amount, it has to go out for RFP. So you need to know, if you work with the decision maker, they typically have the ability to sign off on contracts under a certain amount. Like I think LA has, I don't know, some of the people can sign up to contracts under $500,000. So you want to find out what their signing authority is, and then have the price below that signing authority. So I'll give a good example. I built an app for the Rhode Island Health Department. I made an app for the Rhode Island Health Department, and it was similar to another app I built, and it was for $25,000. I built an app for not Albuquerque, Maricopa County, and that project we built was for $25,000. When I started talking to Rhode Island, they basically said, if it's above 20,000, it has to go to RFP. You know what I did? It was 19.99. And so I did it like the dollar underneath their signing authority, and they signed off on it right away. Is it better not to have a co-founder? In general, if you look at what VCs invested, they will invest in teams. And having been a single co-founder, it is a tough journey, and it is more fun and there's more synergy when you have co-founders. So if you have a team, it looks more attractive um, to an investor. The only thing I've seen is, and I saw the study, like 60% of um, this VC, 60% of why the reasons their startup fail was because of conflicts between the co-founder. And I have to say, I've had conflicts with co-founders, but we were able to resolve them and work forward. So it's like being married. It's like having a significant other, and you have to learn how, you're not going to get along with everybody, but you're going to have to be able to figure out how to resolve your differences. And then how to, when I see people working together, I mentioned earlier, it's like magic. Do you work with startups outside the US? I have, yes. It's usually the other way around, but yeah, I have worked with startups outside the US. How do we outsource sales and marketing? Um, I think in general, when you're looking at a startup, the best salesperson needs to be the CEO. He needs to be the passionate. If you aren't able to sell yourself, you need to be able to sell your concept to investors, etc. You need to find someone that can, or have a co-founder that can. Um, and I think before you start outsourcing sales and marketing, and there's a number, I mean, I get approached in fact, I know a few people that will, be your fractional CRO. I think you should be able to, make sure that you can sell it yourself, or at least understand it before you start really trying to outsource the sales and marketing. And they also obviously have a product that people want to buy. Remember, do your research. At the MVP stage, should we focus on angel investors or VCs? So typically VCs, angel investors, to answer this question, if you are at the MVP stage, you should actually first focus on friends and family. That's usually your first source of funding. So people that know you, people that believe you, and hopefully you have some friends that have some money. And then, angel investors are typically the people that are at the MVP stage. That's, you're looking for seed funding. And actually, another way to do, and I actually thought about putting this on a slide, but I didn't. But another way to do it is do like a Kickstarter. So if you have an idea, you could put it on Kickstarter, and that in its own way becomes its MVP. Are people willing to fund your product? The only problem with that about putting it on a Kickstarter is that other people can see what you do. In fact, I think there's a lot of offshore teams that actually look at Kickstarter for ideas to make. But the most famous example is Oculus Rift. They started out as a Kickstarter, and basically, I think they sold their company for like $1 billion or something crazy like that to Facebook. There's a question here. Sam and grants.gov have a legal entity. I'm not sure what the question is. I don't know if that's a question or a statement. You could just go ahead and rephrase it. So I have a question here. You purchased 75 landing pages for $80 from Card. Is that something you're recommending rather than paying? So I'm in a difference. I had a theory, so that's why I bought so many website landing pages. But for your purposes, buying one is fine. You don't need to buy 75. Yeah, co-founders have conflict. You're absolutely right. And it could be like being in a terrible marriage, but if you have the right chemistry, it could be like in a terrific marriage. And if you yourself personally find that you cannot work with other people, then you probably should not have a co-founder. Splitting equity is not good. That's a comment, but 100% of something that has little value versus 10% of something that has, it's better to have smaller equity that has of something that has greater value versus 100% of something that has no value. So that's a decision you have to make. When should you quit your job? And my answer to that is, well, first of all, I started my entrepreneurial journey after getting laid off from Cisco, and I have a house, a mortgage, and two kids. I don't recommend that. You know, I do recommend that if you are like out of college and you can live in your parents' garage and you can eat top ramen, that's the time to be an entrepreneur. That said, in my case, I started my company while I was still working at Cisco, and I had two separate laptops. And then, after work, I would, I would work on my other company, and you know, you gotta pay rent, and you gotta pay rent, and you gotta put food on the table for yourself. So, you know, I would say stay as long as you can afford to. Like if you get to a point where, you're getting traction, you're getting revenue, maybe that's the time to quit the job, or maybe you quit the job and do side gigs. But that's the challenge I see with startups is, it's great to be able to work on something, but you got to pay rent and you got to put food on the table. So that's a choice you have to make and do the equation. I was just telling there was a guy here and he's working at a company, and my advice to him was stay at your company as long as you can before you work on before you and work on both, because you actually have after hours and the weekends to work on it. Um, but that said, he did quit his job and started working on it full time. So I give him the gutso, and actually investors like that. They like the fact that you are all in and going full, that you don't have another job and you're working on it full time. So if you're looking for investor money, they like it if you are working on it full time. They actually don't like it if you still have a side gig. Yes, and most marriages end in divorce. And that said, most startups fail. Like 90% of startups fail. So yes, for anonymous attendee. I think that's all. I think I'm gonna go ahead and so there's my contact information. The person that was asking about card. Let me see if I can find it here. Sorry, I have a lot of slides. Here it is. So this is card. It's carrd.co. If you want a landing page, it's a great platform, and I'm a big fan of it. And I think that is all of the questions. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time and you spent with me. I actually, even though I didn't hear your voice, I do I like the exchange. And feel free to call me. If you call me, I don't pick up if I don't recognize the number. Just leave me a voicemail and I'll call you back. But the best way is to, email me, and I'm happy to respond. And I have to admit, I am not the best in email management. So if I don't respond, email me again, because I probably missed your that. So with that, thank you very much for your time. And, just feel free to reach out to me afterwards. And again, this recording will be posted. So that I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And I wish you guys a great weekend, and be careful out there today. Today is Friday the 13th. So it is bad luck in the United States. So thank you, everybody.